Ah, draft physics video. Yay. Comments, I guess. Generally speaking, kind of stuff and whatnot, and subjects and whatnot. So anyway, half the day. Um, he got his thing, and he's going to do a video with his splitter, which is cube type, so twice as much as that. Um, I have to find some. See if I got some stuff I can take apart that might have something in it. But anyway, so he says, need some mounting considerations addressing. That wasn't a great collection of words. Anyway, but so far makes for a good clean and perpendicular split. Yes, I shall try to redirect the 90-degree leg beam back. Yeah, either one. Should be achievable. Obviously, we'll try to get a diffraction pattern, but may be prevented by too many loose and imprecise fittings, and should have a video of it ready for the new year or shortly after, should he say also. So yes, yeah, I mean the key thing would be not to bother with both legs at the beginning and just try to get one turn and see how much it changes. Just look at the two beams, essentially the one that goes through the first time compared to the one that reflects, and see how much difference there is in the two. But whatever, we'll progress to your other comment eventually. So superior mind, those are all positive comments. I just don't think I'll bother with those too much. Yeah. The Falwell, Michael Falwell guy, Falwell, does say some things now and then that I don't necessarily agree with. You sound really annoyed and weary. Well, whatever. Yeah, let's see. Wouldn't do any harm to just kick back and take a break now and then. Yeah, I think it does do harm actually. First off, you might never come back, and second, I just think it hurts your mental acuity to too much distance. Some distance is good. Too much distance is bad. But whatever. Who knows. Anyway, glad to hear you'll be working on the audio. Well, piece by piece, so to speak. Let's see, so then some idiot, did you cut your hair? It looks good. Well, I think it looks like shit, actually, but no, I didn't cut it. I broke it into little pieces, basically, by, I'm doing this anti-tick thing. So I take very hot baths and in kind of caustic waters, for the purpose of killing ticks. And it's just, it's not doing my hair any good. So I've modified my procedures, and hopefully that will spare my hair further brutality. Let's see. You know where the photons come from? God. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but fuck it. I'll delete that slop. Isn't movement created by imbalance? I don't know why it's a question mark. I've always argued that yes, stuff moves because there's more force on one side of it than the other side of it, and that's why it moves. There's no other reason to initiate, anyway, a movement. Now, why things maintain velocity is because they're holding imbalance inside of themselves. Their own little neutrons are imbalanced and maintaining their momentum for them. I would argue it's likely the neutrons that are the part of the mechanism that's like a gyroscope, and the gyroscope gets out of balance, out of round, and so it processes in a direction because it's not round anymore. I'm pretty sure of that anyway. I think it's a good theory. Alright, Hothliday is actually going to concede a point here. Amazing. But they don't say stupid stuff, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, interesting point. I wasn't listening first time around. Yeah, I don't think you've listened to too many of the videos the first time around, actually. The point about why don't we hypothesize singular photons splitting at the beam splitter. Yes, you don't have any. The physics of the beam splitter is completely undescribed. Even by the LIGO people, they just step right over it. Single photon, multiple photons. We don't have to explain any of that crap. And yeah, you do, because that's quantum mechanics. You have to sort of stick to your rule book. If you're going to do this quantum mechanic thing, and you're going to say that the individual photons interfere with themselves, then you're going to have to, or you can't just say, anytime we feel like it, we'll say photons are interfering with each other instead of themselves. You can't change the rules. It either happens one way or it happens the other way. You can't have it both ways, because both ways won't work mathematically. So, yeah, I had to point this out. Let's just remember. No one else ever, I've never heard a single other place ever, anywhere, where anybody even pointed out that the fundamental theory is being violated by the mechanics described in the interferometer. Because those mechanics, by quantum mechanics, shouldn't be happening. Photons shouldn't interfere with other photons. I'll give it some thought, but off the cuff, something just came to me. I say again, lay descriptions are the problem. I'm just this fucking resort to, they're just pretending to explain it. They're not really explaining it. In third-year physics classes, they're just talking shit. They're not really worrying about actually being accurate or telling anything close to the truth. I mean, it's just such a cop-out excuse that it's okay because the real physicists somewhere are doing it right. It's just such a crock of shit. Because you see what the real physicists doing, which is creating 11 universes out of their string theories and all kinds of preposterous nonsense. So you can't even back that up, that there's some physicists that are doing the hard real physics and the rest aren't doing all this phantasmagorical silly shit based on these fucking inaccurate premises. So every time you use this line, I'm just going to point it out. I mean, it's just such a cop-out. Oh, they're deliberately being wrong and inexplicit and completely contrary. They're completely contradicting themselves because people are too stupid in third-year physics classes. Where they're telling them, don't worry, you won't understand any of this. Oh, okay, so I don't understand it, and you're also not going to tell me the truth. I mean, fuck that lame excuse. Alright, pure QM theory just says that each and every single particle there is an associated wave characteristic. Well, if you think that's even what it says, fine, but I think that's just nonsense. I don't think that has anything to do with the actual function, in the sense that, again, you can say that giving an electron a velocity means you gave it a wave. If you think that's the truth, then you're dumber than I think you're pretty dumb, but do you really think that's what's actually happening? That somehow because you accelerate an electron, you make it go 10 miles an hour, all of a sudden it's waving? I mean, what a pile of shit. Absolute fucking steaming shit. Thanks to Broglie. Yeah, so he brings up de Broglie. Yeah, so to make the math work, they've made velocity into a wave function. So the velocity that, say, a meteor flies next to the Earth and it gets bent in its path, that didn't happen merely because gravity deflected the meteor. No, that happened because the meteor never had a position, didn't know where it was going, and it has a wave function, and the wave function deflected it. That's their explanation. When we know that's not what happens, we can watch the fucking meteor, we can see it in the fucking sky. It's not in 4 million different places at once. It's not at Venus. It's not in Pluto. It's not in every probabilistic or possible location in the universe. No, we watch it go right by the Earth and we watch it move. So this is just such a, I mean, how do you get away with this crap coming out of your fucking mouth without your brain saying, don't say that, that is just too fucking stupid to defend this made-up de Broglie mathematical gimmick. It's a fucking mathematical gimmick. It has nothing to do with reality. So here I'm pointing out how they're bullshit, and you're showing me as evidence of the solid science, the bullshit science. Oh, look, this is how real QM theory is done. Completely made up nonsense. Fucking A. In the double slit experiment, they try to mystify you by considering the particle nature and its implication that it went through both slits. Well, they have to explain why the thing started off as a particle and it finished as a particle. So yeah, they sort of have to indicate it was a point when it left and it was a point where it arrives. So somehow you have to throw that into the mix somewhere, because if you make it all wave, then there's no points anywhere. There's no quantum, dumbass. But this is not true in QM. How is it not true in QM that it's a discrete, tiny bit of energy and it lands in one fucking location? How is that not true in QM? What a crock of shit that sentence is. Or at least not as simple as that. Oh, so that's a cop-out. What you say, how you describe it can depend upon the interpretation you take. So again, this nonsense that any of the interpretations have anything to do with discrete bits flying through space, and every interpretation has to do with making up a fake universe or fake properties given to the tiniest particles in the universe and making them into special things because I give them a velocity. I give this lighter a velocity. There, I just gave it a wave function. It's a wave now. Now it doesn't know where it is. See, it is somewhere now, but when I release it, it all of a sudden isn't anywhere. It doesn't know where it is. It's in some fog. It's blah 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 woo 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 woo. No, it isn't any of that shit. And when it interacts with something, it's going to interact based on the forces that move it. Just like the Earth moved the asteroid with its gravity, with the fact that it's changing the field of force around the Earth, and that change in the field of force changes the trajectory of the asteroid. There's no wave function involved. There's no properties the asteroid had. The asteroid didn't have any properties. The Earth has properties around it, surrounding it. The Earth affects the space around it. That's true. It doesn't bend it. It changes the density of the particles in it. Asshole. This is just so obnoxious to defend this mush with this gobbledygook explanation. Oh, it's too complicated. You can't understand. You can't. I mean, this is just such cop-out fucking excuses for their overt duplicity, their overt contradictions. All right, interpretation you take. Thus, we can say consistently that clearly the wave property goes through both slits as waves are spread out phenomenon. Yeah, you can say it, but you have no evidence of it. And again, you just keep saying that, well, because it looks like water, I'm going to presume it is water. So I'm going to presume the existence of a medium, and somehow the photon's moving through a medium, and the medium's bending the location of the photon by magical energy that comes from absolutely nowhere. As to how this relates to the interferometer, I'd say the implication is plain. Okay, so he thinks there's a plain implication here. The associated wave does indeed need to be thought of as propagating down both arms. So he actually is conceding that yes, it has to be a single photon phenomenon, and that somehow the single photon creates its wave function, and its wave function goes down both arms. So but one photon goes down both arms. This is what they're defending as a theory of how the reality works. The asteroid, as it goes by the Earth, it splits into two asteroids, and the two asteroids, because they're different distances from the Earth, manipulate each other, and then it turns back into one asteroid after it leaves. I mean, it's just such a crock of shit. Anyway. It does indeed need to be thought of as propagating down both arms. The thing is, on returning, only half of that half goes onto the screen to self-interfere. Well, again, once you have them going the two lengths, that's creating the interference there. The difference in the wavelength is being created in the arms then. So you don't need to do the interference in space thing anymore. well, beyond the fact that somehow you have to combine those two out of phase waves. That is a quarter of the beam. The other quarter of the beam causing interference is actually coming from the pass-through beam. Well, again, you'd have 4 quarters to make up the whole photon here somewhere, so I don't know if this exactly makes sense. I mean, half the wave function goes one way, half the wave function goes the other way, and then it'll be split into 2 quarters, but the 2 quarters will add up to the 2 halves that you're going to be, that'll account for the whole phenomenon, in that one beam will be on when the other beam is off. So there's still going to be a whole photon in the end. Anyway, this I think is consistent and explains a technical detail. I don't think it explains anything, but anyway. Subtly, you rightly raise. Yes, I rightly raised the problem of this experiment doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so you are right to say, I think, the interferometer experiment should be done with single photons, certainly to prove my account. Well, again, I don't think there's a chance in hell that the photon wave function takes both paths, so I think that's just not even close to any chance at all. Because frankly, you can't even make sense of it. Let's say that it does take both paths, then the wave function has to hit the mirror, and the wave function has to reflect off the mirror. Now, wouldn't the reflection off the mirror be a termination event, meaning the photon would have to arrive there and become real again? So somehow you'd have to have both photons becoming real again somehow, or only one of the paths the photon becomes real on. So now you have another spooky action at a distance problem. You're just creating entangled wave functions then. So instead of entangled photons, you're going now the step further, saying you can entangle wave functions. I bet nobody's thought of doing it though. Yeah, why wouldn't they think of doing it though? I mean, you have it sitting there in front of you for decades. Why wouldn't somebody ask the question, oh, well, we did this single photon thing with the 2-slit experiment, 100 years ago. I mean, maybe somebody ought to try doing that with a few of these other experiments. So I don't think it's never been done. I think they haven't been able to confirm wave function, and therefore they said, oh, we must have done something wrong because it didn't work. I think that's what happened. Too few asking the question you pose. Yeah, and that's not evidence of something. So these are your experts who are supposed to know everything, and they're supposed to be on top of all these details, and they're just so superior that they can't explain anything in any kind of rational language, and yet they didn't think of it. They didn't think that, well, this would be very good evidence, because this would prove not only the photons have a wave function, it would also prove they're entangled wave functions, which is even cooler. Further, the wave characteristics is deemed to be pure probability. Well, whatever it's deemed to be, it's your language. You say you're going to call waves a certain thing with certain properties, and then you're going to turn them into, no, it's really like rolling dice. It doesn't have anything to do with waves. I mean, make up your mind. Which is a ridiculous notion, I agree. Well, at least you caught that. You fetched some sort of reason here. The recent video was actually used as a reply to Piro on a debate website. So now he's talking about a different subject of why he posted that Al-Kahari dopey video where he's talking shit. Anyway, Jim, whatever. I spoke of recently, just backing up an assertion I made that Copenhagen interpretation is pejoratively referred to as shut up and calculate. Well, I don't even know if that video proved that, but it just demonstrates that nobody seeks rational explanation for their own paradoxes and the ludicrousy of their own theories. And they sit there and look at him and say, gee, that's insane. But mathematically, we can convert bending an asteroid in gravity into an interference math. It can be done. You can convert the bang, there's another example is when they first detected what was it called? Alpha radiation. You know, and alpha radiation is nucleuses. So it's like hydrogen nucleus, helium nucleuses. And so it's, you know, comes out of the radioactive material. And then they found that, you know, if they put a layer of gold in front of it, that there's a certain number that'll come out in a certain way, and that's it. And then when they noticed is in the dark space, there's all these, once in a while something does this weird thing. It comes out crooked, really crooked, all kinds of fucked up crooked, but it's very rarely. And so they figured out that, well, basically it's the nucleus they're shooting, hitting the nucleuses of the atoms in the gold, and it doesn't really hit it, the atoms. It hits off them like a magnetic field, like it was hitting a magnetic field. They think it's an electric field, but fuck, it's a magnetic field, retards. I still can't understand why people ain't getting this point that electrons and protons are the magnetic monopoles. I mean, it's just so fucking obvious. I don't know how you people can keep missing that one. It's just glaringly right in your face, kind of the truth. But anyway, so the nucleus isn't bouncing, it's deflecting off the field around the nucleus. It doesn't actually hit the nucleus, because the two nucleuses have the same charge because they're both proton heavy, technically. And so the protons are bouncing off of each other's field. And that's the results you get. It adds up mathematically. So what point did I want to make to that? Well, it had some relevance to what I was saying. You'll just have to figure that out. 100th of a meter is called a centimeter. You Americans have really got to get on the metric bandwagon. Well, I think the guy was doing that deliberately. So again, I don't think that's a terribly useful comment. Clearly, converting our comfort notions of miles and yards and feet and all that kind of stuff into, you know, this centimeter thing would be a great idea, and they tried to do it and they just gave up too soon, in my opinion. I mean, it did take 10 years, but they really didn't do it very rigorously, and it did just mess up the game when you have to have both sets of tools, and it really was a pain in the ass, and so it really is dumb. But regardless, I don't think the guy in the video was trying. I think he knew 100th of a meter was a centimeter. He was explaining it in terms of, you know, because he was going to go to the powers of 10 powers. So he was just leading up to the idea that this is 100th of it, and this is 1,000th, and 1,000,000th, and that idea. So yeah, fuck you. Kind of a useless comment. And Fragmented Souls posting videos to kind of joke videos. They're kind of funny, but you know, whatever. I just don't have any sense of humor left. You know, there's too many assholes in the world there's no time for a sense of humor. Alright, I agree when you said that the speed of light should be renamed the speed of force. This point reveals an important unifying principle that manifests itself at first glance. If light is just a coherent alignment of gravity force bits, they're not. The whole point is they're not coherently aligned. They have both polarization, and most of the sources of light don't release photons at exactly the same instant, and therefore they're seldom in phase. Then light is detected by means of resonant frequencies. So I don't know. You know, people just throw this crap out. You know, guided osmosis. No, fuck you. I don't even know what that means. Gravity isn't absorbed as much without a carrier frequency. No, gravity doesn't have any frequencies involved, idiot. And so you still don't get the agenda here. You either argue my theory or you defend conventional physics, but I'm really not doing your silly ideas. Alright? I mean, all your little unicorn bullshit and nonsense, I have no interest in it. I'm doing evolution against all other religions, jackass. I don't give a shit about your silly gravity gives a fuck about a frequency, because it doesn't, asshole. Hence it penetrates all moving bodies. No, it penetrates them because it's the smallest thing in the universe. Well, you know what I mean. LOL. No, I don't. Fuck you. So another fragmented soul. Why RF waves of different frequency have different properties? Because they're of a different frequency. It's like asking, why does light of different colors reflect off different objects, at different angles? Why does, well, you can even argue, why is glass opaque to some frequencies and transparent to other frequencies? Glass isn't very transparent to ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light doesn't do very well through glass, or even infrared. So yeah, it's because the frequency has to do with how it's jiggling the electrons. So it has to jiggle them. The resonant word the other guy was using, has to jiggle them at a harmonic. It has to jiggle them so it's always jiggling when they're going the right way for the force to have an impact. So when the electron hits, the other electron has to be jiggling the right way, so it has to be the right temperature, and it has to hit it the right moment, and then it'll reflect or be transmitted. So there's rules to why, and it has to do with timing. So the first one hits, starts it jiggling, and then the second one takes advantage of that to tip it over. It's a tipping point argument. I've said tipping point at least 100 times. At least now 100 times I've said tipping point. And then you ask it, but whatever, who cares, fine, ask your dopey questions. I.e., reflecting off or going through the stratosphere, etc. It has nothing to do with the theory I'm proposing answering this question. Absolutely nothing. Because they don't have it. They're not going to give you an answer. It clearly has to do with the fact that the electrons are in a condition, and the condition of the energy that's hitting them has to be compatible for certain events to take place. They have to be in sync, so to speak, for one thing to happen versus another thing to happen. That's why temperature is important and pressure is important, is because they all have to do with the tension of the electron you're hitting. So the more tension, the tighter the electron is bound, the more energy you need to move it. The looser it's bound, the more it has energy in it even, the more energetic, the more potential energy it contains, the bigger it is, the more likely it is for you to pop that electron free. Alright, now let's see. I don't think this guy's at all rational, so I think this won't work. A static ether, so question mark. Yeah, the point being that static ether doesn't provide energy. So it's just like saying ether is moving the earth into the sun. It doesn't explain how the ether is doing that. And ether between magnets doesn't explain how the ether gets the energy to push the magnets together. You people have a problem. You have to have energy in your system to the real void is Einstein's bent space. There's no energy moving the planets together, and he only gets away with it because every single gravitational situation has a point where you can theoretically understand the object goes in and then the object has to climb out. But in real life that doesn't happen. Objects do just consume stuff, and until they explode or something they never go out, so you never give back the energy. So, but it's clearly an energy problem, and they just get around it by pretending that, well, because the same energy will be consumed when the object leaves, that it's okay, we can pretend no energy was involved. We can pretend it's not an energy thing that moves the earth to the sun, when clearly it's energy. You must mean permanent space. Fuck you. Stop it. First off, I know that at Hans are 3, Greys are 4, and man is 5. You're done. Okay, then he says, whatever. No frequency, question mark. Really? You know too much. Me's first off, neither you should be loggerheads. Other are Luciferian. So now he's going to talk about Lucifer. And then he's going to say, oh my God, shut up. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? No, I don't see, and hopefully I'll never see you again. Okay. Get help. What else can I say? You're fucked. You're just so fucked. Lucifer is a cartoon character. Ah, the cowboy. So that's who this orthopedic shoes is. And what he needs is an orthopedic hat. Your brain is crooked. You need a hat. Orthopedic hat. Specially made with shims in it and shit to fucking straighten your brain, you fuckhead. Alright. Why is it funny to you that the video produced by a phone company is being self-promotional? It seemed funny to me that they were just so obviously self-promotional. You think they would sneak it in, but they didn't. They weren't sneaky at all, and it was just so obviously a commercial, and it just tainted the whole thing, if you get my drift. Do you think all scientists communicate solely through video and always have? I think yes, in a sense. I mean, videos are just a frame of images. Newton put a ton of images in his book. Images are a good thing, idiot. Alright. Do you think science, like the only reason Maxwell wrote that stupid wave equation? Well, again, it's not a stupid wave equation. It's about vectors. It's about rays. It's a ray equation if you really look at it. So if you want to show me the part of a Maxwell equation that's actually a wave, alright, yes, it has frequency in it. It has on and off, turning a magnetic field on and off. That's not a wave, asshole. There's no wave function in Maxwell's mathematics. So just lie some more. Let's see. Stupid wave equation that totally ruined physics. Now, what totally is the mistake of physics is that they have these 50-50 choices, like plus and minus on the battery, and they fuck it up and nobody ever fixes it. And the fact that Maxwell turned light into an electromagnetic thing, instead they should have just turned the magnetism, into a light thing. They should have realized that magnetism is doing the same thing the photons are doing, not the other way around. Idiot. But anyway, was because he was being sponsored by tycoons who want to invest in fake scam telegraph machine. Yeah, whatever. So again, this humor you throw in here, it's supposed to be funny sarcasm or something. It's just so fucking useless, you piece of shit. You're incorrigible, right? Like I ever made that such an argument. I've defended Maxwell's equations as being a good, they're a sensible expansion of Gauss's law and Ampere's theories. I mean, it's just rational to recognize there's a field of energy, and that's, Ampere didn't really do that, asshole. These videos are played into classes. Yes. They were intended in general audiences, genius. No, they were actually intended for like high school audiences, because this was after Sputnik, and they wanted to encourage kids to get into science. But they're saying exactly the same thing Professor Lewin is saying to his third-year physics students at MIT. So this excuse that this is junk physics is nonsense. It's exactly the same experiments Professor Lewin did. Exactly. With the same exact interpretation. And it's wrong. They have advanced the subject in 60 years. I'm saying, asshole, they haven't advanced the instruction in 60 years. It's exactly the same words used. He says, genius, asshole. You're an asshole. It's called they figured out how radiation works and moves on to something else already, for fuck's sake. I don't even... There's plenty of radiation. There's a muon video from 1956 or something. Okay, where they even show you the contraption they used to trap the things and everything. I mean, that's that old. Let's see. You bitch at other YouTubers when they talk about irrelevant personal stuff, but it's okay for you to mention your mother worked at American Airlines. So I can't even believe that kind of shot. I, how long did it take me to say that? My mother worked at American Airlines. Yeah, she was too tall to be a stewardess. 15 seconds, maybe? 9 seconds? You're just such an asshole. Anyway, actually, you are wrong about light does not equal radio waves thing. I don't know what that even means. I'm wrong about light not equaling radio waves thing. So, yes, I'm saying light and radio waves are functionally created by different atomic process. Yes. You can't create a light by putting a 700 nanometer wavelength of electricity into something and provoke it. You could put maybe 40,000 alternating volts, alternating 40,000 cycles a second. You could take 3 volts alternating at like 40,000 cycles a second and stimulate a crystal to produce photons. But you can't do it by putting the actual frequency into the crystal, jackass. For one thing, there's no reason you should know this, but scientists have experimentally detected magnetism from polarized light. Never happened. It's just complete bullshit. The only thing that can be magnetized is a medium. The medium changes where the atoms are located. Obviously, changing where the atoms are located is going to change how the light transmits through a medium, idiot. That's not a mystery. That you change the polarizing filter of a transparent, that you can turn on polarization filters, like a Polaroid. You could have Polaroid glasses that turn on and off. Yeah, that's existed for 20 years, idiot. Gee, you're fucking stupid. I'll post a link in another comment because I know you won't approve it. And even if the link had any merit, so the only thing is, yes, he did post a link. I didn't know this is what he's talking about. They're not talking about polarized light, so he doesn't even read the article he posts a link to. They've broken off little pieces of silicone, and it reflects light of different colors. I think the article doesn't even say, but I think what they're saying happens is they can shoot red light into it, and a different color red light leaves. Okay, but not a spectacular observation. They've created what they say are 200 nanometer thick crystals of silicon, and but it has nothing to do with magnetic mono. That's all theory. It says right at the beginning of the paragraph. The theoretical explanation, it has nothing to do with anything the experiment proves, you asshole. So you still don't know the difference between proving something and just talking out of your ass about how, well, it's a Copenhagen and it does this and the photon, goes through both slits as the wave function, and all that's just talk. That's not proven, you idiot. Shit. All right. Let's see. Have experimentally detected magnetism from polarized light. I mean, just complete bullshit sentence. That have experimentally detected magnetism from polarized light. That didn't happen anywhere, and it's nowhere in the article. I'll post a link in another comment because I know you won't approve it. But just for the information of your audience, it is there. Well, we'll go look at the article, and you'll see it's a piece of shit. It just verifies my point that there's no scrutiny here. There's nobody inspecting any of this stuff and going, oh yeah, that's a pile of shit. That's just theoretical nonsense. They haven't proven shit. There's no gatekeeper here. It is so funny to me how you rag on the fact that videos from the 60s exist on the internet, but then you never actually read up on the current state of knowledge of physics. Another claim without a basis. Where's your evidence that I haven't looked at their current claims? Their current claims are just wackier and wackier, and their evidence for their claims is more and more empty and vacuous. Like the stupid article that was written about the double lensing. We have the lensed image from 5 billion years ago, and here's the same thing getting lensed 4 billion years later. And the image didn't match the article, for fuck's sake. I mean, you people are just such liars. I already read this, right? Yeah. All right, delete. So this is just the cowboy. Let's just understand. This isn't a human. And yeah, so it had 5 thumbs up. And this stupid article, like links never get thumbs up like this. So clearly he's just using sock accounts to boost his own comments, which means he's doing the same thing to my videos. So he's just doing the downgrading, 5 or 6 no votes for my videos from one petty asshole. And this is a guy saying he's protecting the truth and honor. I am protecting the dignity of science by being a spammer and a cheater and a crook and a liar and a deceiver. Why don't you just admit how many times you downgrade one single video? How many times you thumb down one video? Why don't you admit the truth? Why don't you talk the truth, liar? You're the one with no integrity, you lying sack of shit. So anyway, here's his liar. Here's this bullshit article. Okay, so another Science Daily, which is who the fuck knows. And so it says optical materials. Light's magnetism shows its true colors. None of this, and there's nothing in this article that demonstrates any of this. Researchers in Singapore have created tiny spheres of silicone that can strongly interact with the magnetic field of visible wavelength light. There's no evidence that any of that's happening. That's just their theory. They're saying they're creating magnetic monopoles. Well, as I've already pointed out, we already know what magnetic monopoles are if you have any kind of brains at all, and they're called electrons and protons. These engineered magnetic materials, again, engineered by just knocking flakes off of a piece of silicon, enable new ways of controlling light at the nanoscale. Just all hype. There's nothing in this article that even gives you a hint of how they actually did their light experiments. Just nothing. So it says here, light is an oscillating wave of electric and magnetic fields. So again, they say it as if they've proven that somewhere. There's no proof of that. That's just some sort of notion in people's heads, but it has nothing to do with like evidence. The way the electric field component interferes with the atoms in a material largely determines how light interacts with matter. And again, I would argue what largely determines it is the state of the electron that the photon hits. And the photon doesn't have any play in it at all. It hits an electron that has an attitude. Electrons have attitude. Photons don't have attitude. That's why this whole theory is back-assward. You don't even understand that the big things are complicated, the little things aren't. You're all so fucking goddamn stupid. With visible light, however, the influence of the magnetic component is usually much smaller. So some guy, Archidel Kafilov, at the A-Star, whatever that is, A-Star Data Storage Institute in Singapore, yes, and co-workers have now created tiny spheres of silicon that can strongly interact with the magnetic field of visible wavelength light. It has a footnote, but the footnote isn't included in this article. I guess the footnote is, well, it isn't really visible wavelength light. It's a picture we drew on a piece of paper. These engineered magnetic materials enable new ways of controlling light at the nanoscale. So again, there's no evidence that they have they have made anything even magnetic, let alone magnetically controlling light. So again, just understand there's no physical evidence of magnetism ever deflecting light. Even the strongest magnets, the Hadron Collider, can't bend a light beam. So there's not even any evidence that even if you found a magnetic monopole, that it would have any hope of bending photons anyway. Okay, relative permeability is a measure of the substance's ability to support a magnetic field. Most optical materials have permeability approximately equal to 1. Yes, right. A more diverse choice, however, would open the door to a whole host. So this is just speculation about, oh well, if that wasn't true, then maybe we could make a bunch of materials that had, permutativities that were, still transparent and, could just disrupt the path of light in some sort of constructive way. Duh. Like that is going to happen. The researchers fired a high-intensity laser at a silicone wafer, which blasted off spheres of silicone between 100 and 200 nanometers. I don't know whether that's width or thickness, but I guess it doesn't matter. They're very small little pieces of silicon. So this is just a scattering argument, essentially. When you have something that's only 200 nanometers thick, this is like dust or smoke in the atmosphere. Obviously, it's going to diffract light. It's going to scatter light. Light's going to hit the atoms of it, and it's going to get and it's going to have a high impact on the atoms because there's so few atoms to dampen the effect of the photon's impact. So the smaller something is, I mean, you know, if I throw a piece of popcorn at this lighter, it ain't going to do much. But I throw a piece of popcorn at a fucking Cheerio, it'll do a whole lot. So, duh, light has more impact on small material bodies. Gee, what a fucking surprise. What a brilliant article. So anyway, here's the key paragraph. In a theoretical analysis, all right, no, this has nothing to do with evidence. Kapashkov or whoever, and co-workers, boy, I'd love to be in that category. Oh, I'm a co-worker, isn't that cool? Showed that the optical response resulted from incoming light generated a circular electrical field or displacement current in the sphere. So this is just their theory. They're just drawing you again. I can make it so an asteroid, it has a wave function, and that's what deflects it in a different direction, and I don't have to pay any attention to the fact that there's no evidence that there's any wave function. There's no evidence the asteroid didn't know where it was, and it was a probabilistic equation. No. And the fact is, I could play the videotape and you could see for yourself there was no probabilistic equation, there was no complexity. The asteroid came in at a certain angle, the rules of gravity says you're going to bend at a certain angle, and that's exactly what the fuck it did. So instead of the simple answers, they just keep looking for these strangled, preposterous, nonsensical fucking explanations, but they've clearly done no such thing as what they state here, thus in turn supporting an oscillating magnetic field in the middle of the particle, claiming something they've done in the middle of the particle. So they did something in the middle. They're claiming they know they did that. A so-called magnetic dipole, see image, there's no image. We have experimentally demonstrated that silicon nanoparticles can have strong electric and magnetic dipole resonances in the visible spectrum. Yeah, nothing. None of that's been proven, demonstrated in any way. I don't see any photos, so fuck this. So this is what he claims is this is the good science, hard science. Now we have real proof of something. So they've proven that light is magnetic. With this experiment proves it. Light has magnetism, and this is the experiment they say proves it. So this is what he says. I can't be right because this article says light is moved by magnetism. Yet where's the evidence that that took place here? There's evidence that light hit atoms. Even 200 nanometers is still atoms worth of material, jackass. I would imagine it is. I don't know how small atoms go down to, but I guess I'll have to find out how many nanometers thick an atom is. Alright. Anyway. Just bullshit. I mean, maybe it's just like 1 nanometer. So maybe it's 200 atoms thick. So let's say an atom is a nanometer thick. It's still 200 atoms thick. Asshole. Anyway. So enough of that. Back to comments here. Alright, so yeah, fuck your stupid douche link. Fuck your lying asshole bag of shit fuckhead. Alright, last comment. Why is it incoherent if 4 equations unify the electric and magnetic forces? I don't think they did in the first place. But I would agree that there is no such thing. There's no electric force. There's just magnetism. Electrons moving is not a force. The force is what moves the electrons. Force and matter, those are the 2 different things. So when you're moving matter, you don't call it force. This isn't force. Force isn't the lighter moving. Force is the thing that made the lighter move. Force is the thing that's going to make the matter it interacts with move. And in just the same way as the helium nucleus hitting the nucleus of gold atoms, it's not going to actually hit it. It's going to be bounced by the force around the nucleus. The force changed, just like the asteroid is going to be bent by the gravitational field forces. Matter isn't a force. Matter is affected by force. Dumbass. You obviously don't understand any of this. You obviously are an ignorant pig and a liar and a faker and a fraud who puts fake thumbs ups on your own comment. You're the fraud and the fake. Maxwell discovered an equation that predicts that changes in magnetic flux or changes in an electric field. Well, again, how is a change in a field a wave? How is turning the light switch on and off waving anything? There's no necessity for any notion that it's waving anything, especially when we know the light rays aren't going to all come out like radio waves all in the same phase. There's not going to be any wave of light coming out of the light bulb. There's going to be a bunch of rays of light coming out of the light bulb. Jackass. So, it's a ray theory, Maxwell's ray theory, and that's what it was. The whole point was his mathematics points out that it's all vector math. No waves necessary. Let's see, create electric field would trigger a wave phenomenon. So again, there's no triggering a wave phenomenon. There's merely energy going at straight line vectors, hitting another source, and creating another magnetic filter. He derived this by assuming asymmetry in how these forces interact. I don't even understand that nonsense. But regardless, the obvious connection between magnetism and electricity is now quite obvious. Anyway, I think it was always kind of obvious that the same kind of forces were involved in terms of charge, which is called electrical, has attraction and repulsion, and magnetism has attraction and repulsion. So in my opinion, it was sort of obvious that the two forces were somehow really related. Jackass. If you actually paid attention during your physics lectures, you'd know this. No, like I said, I did pay attention. I've looked at the equations. I don't derive the equations, but there's no wave function in Maxwell's equations. There's just clean transfers of energy, jackass, because that's what Gauss did, and that's what Ampere did, jackass. Anyway, this discovery led to vast simplification of the then current model. I don't know what vast means, you know. Says you. The math is still going to be difficult for difficult surfaces. It's going to be really easy for clean geometry, clean circles, clean squares, all that kind of easy math. It's going to be difficult math for anything convoluted, no matter what you do. Anyway, it simplified the equations and led to the invention of pretty much every modern convenience from the telegraph to the computer. So another bold, weird-ass claim that somehow the improvements that Maxwell made to the existing equations were somehow necessary. No, what it really led to was Einstein turning gravity into, again, just perverting another force into this nonsensical, magical, virtual photon-y force, and that's what his bent space is. It's just another virtual mechanism to create the reality instead of recognizing there's a real mechanism. You want to bitch about how it doesn't provide a meta-explanation. So again, I've never said anything that Maxwell's equations are wrong. I've never argued against them theoretically as being good math, and yet he's fucking straw-manning me with some argument that somehow Maxwell's wave equations prove bent space, or Maxwell's equations prove that light's a wave. They don't prove any such thing. He just announced it. He just decided to say, well, because this magnetism is moving the same speed as light, I'm going to make light a magnetic function. That's all that happened, jackass. There's no other proof. There's nothing in his mathematics that requires it, asshole. And again, he was a believer in ether. So again, the reason why he did it was just because he thought the unifying mechanism was the ether, you shithead. So you're just such a lying sack of shit. Alright, let's see. You want to provide, but then you whine like a spoiled child when anybody applies the same standards to your crackpot garbage physics theories. Well, again, you haven't applied any standard. You haven't provided a single fucking argument, not one single argument, pointing out how something I'm saying the truth isn't consistent with the evidence. Not one fucking argument. You scum. So anyway, fuck you again and again and again. I'm actually, YouTube really ought to do something about these kind of people. They have obvious fake accounts. They just use it to do destructive things like downgrade for videos. I mean, it should be, they ought to have an algorithm for that. I mean, YouTube's famous for its algorithms. I mean, they ought to have an algorithm to figure out who the trolls are here. Pussy fucking company takes no responsibility for the jackasses it lets loose, these liars and cheaters who do this fake shit. I mean, you have a system of thumbs up and thumbs down, and they want to cheat the system. They want to play by the fucking goddamn rules. Amazing fucking cunts. So, fuck you. Till dead and such. Get what you deserve, lying faker. Alright, so I think that's enough. Yeah. So, so we have a couple of experiments anyway, I think, within the realm of doability. I just, I just don't want to, don't like paying for anything. But yes, I do have to get a couple of radio transmitters. So the key is you have to have them both doing exactly the same thing at the same time. So I get one transmitter and I have to set up two antennas, I guess. And then I just have to have a receiver that just measures, which that should be easy. So you just have to create enough signal, and then you can just show the actual voltage on an antenna. I mean, an antenna will actually collect the energy if you have enough energy coming at it, and you can just measure the absolute voltage. And again, if they do that simple experiment, it will demonstrate that there's not a lack of radio waves at the cancellation points. It's just that the two waves are jamming each other. Anyway. But there's no understanding of the basic functions here. See, the real key point is there's the two experiments, the light experiment and the radio experiment, completely different circumstances, because the light's interacting with surfaces. And you could see that in the experiment with the single wire. There's two surfaces in the single wire. The pattern looks like the single slit pattern. A single slit, two surfaces. The pattern looks like the single slit pattern, right? Then the double slit done right is two small slits and an impedant in the middle and two small slits. That's the real double slit experiment. So you can just understand, if you're using a single wire between two wide slits, there's a whole bunch of empty space relative to surface space. So the effects of the surface photons will be very small relative to the area of the slit. So the wider you make the slit, the less the surface can influence the output. So you can't see the effect of the surfaces. But if you take away take away middle space, then you can see more and more the effects of the surface diffraction. Anyway, but it's clearly, for light, it's hitting electrons. And for the radio experiment, what's causing the diffraction is merely the overlaying of two out-of-phase radio frequencies on top of each other, and the fact that we can't detect the signal when two waves are on top of each other out of phase. Jeez, it's just not complicated. But there's huge differences. The experiments they have nothing in common. There's no common mechanics to the two experiments. The radio signal isn't rubbing up against a surface that has electrons on it, for fuck's sake. I mean, they're completely different experiments. One has diffraction in it, in the sense that the photons are bent, and one of them is just about the fact that overlaying frequencies interfere with each other. And you can sort of prove it another way. Because in the light experiment, I would argue, where the bright spots are, the light is actually twice as intense as it would be if it was spread out evenly. So the bright bands are actually twice as intense as they would be if it just spread out and diffracted. And that probably can be proven. And in the radio experiment, where the the beams overlay each other, it's not going to be twice as much radio wave. It's just going to be the regular amount that's everywhere. There won't be any extra. Yeah. And I think they already know that. That's why they don't create radio towers that are next to each other to make the radio signal go farther. Because they can't make it go farther. Because they can't make the signal twice as intense. Okay, so that's enough. Yeah. People are just such fucking cunts. Anyway, I shall go now make bread. Yeah, bread making day. Oh, I put in a little personal bit.